Coming into the season, the Portland Trailblazers were one of those teams that I just wasn't too high on. They had veterans that were on big contracts that just we all knew weren't going to be a big part of their future. And then this Portland team has young talent, but they haven't found their franchise guy that they want to build around yet. And so my expectations just weren't too high for this team. I figured that they'd be near the bottom of the Western Conference, and for the first half of the season, that's exactly what happened. This team was 13-28 through the first half of the season, and just like most rebuilding teams, they had tons of bad losses. On the screen, I've listed some of the most notable losses they had earlier this season, and just by looking at these scores, you can tell that Portland really struggled with their effort in a lot of games. After they lost by 45 points to Memphis, that's something Chauncey Billups pointed out. He said that their effort was just embarrassing. It looked like they were a team that gave up. And because this team had several losses where the effort just didn't appear to be there at all, fans started to speculate that maybe Billups had lost the locker room. So this was a team who had a few veteran players on big contracts who we all figured were inevitably going to be traded. You didn't exactly have a young star who you felt you could identify as your franchise player. There were rumors that the coach was going to be fired because he had lost the locker room. And to make matters worse, their big offseason addition, Deni Avdija, was struggling to start the year. And that was pretty concerning because Portland's currently in a rebuild, and they gave up 2 first-round picks to get Deni Avdija. And with all that being said, it's come as a huge surprise that Portland has actually been able to completely turn things around and actually re-enter the play-in conversation. Even though the changes didn't occur right away, Scoot Henderson brought up the fact that the team had a team meeting in December, and he really cites that as the main reason why the team is playing as well as they are now. So he said that in that team meeting that Chauncey Billups was very candid with the players, and he basically asked everyone individually if they felt that they could be held accountable. And Scoot said that everybody said yes to that question, and since then they've really just adopted this mentality of playing together. And again, the changes didn't occur immediately, but we're seeing this team play unselfish basketball as of late, and it comes from the fact that guys aren't caring about how much they're scoring, how many minutes they're getting. They're really just buying into this team concept. A guy like Scoot Henderson, he was the 3rd overall pick in last year's draft, had a disappointing rookie year. When guys are in that situation, they can often feel like coming into their second year, they really have to prove themselves. They have to put up good stats to get people off their back and really prove that they were worth that pick. But Scoot Henderson hasn't just been handed a starting role so that he can gain confidence. Chauncey Billups said in an interview that he wants Scoot to earn all of his minutes, and he said that whether Scoot is starting or coming off the bench, he just wants to see him play with effort and play the right way and impact the game in a positive manner for the team. And that's exactly what Scoot has been doing so far this year. Even though we're just a little bit over halfway through the year, he already has more steals and more deflections than he had all of last season. And he's doing that despite averaging less minutes per game. He's also gotten better at defending without fouling, and then offensively he's more patient with the ball in his hands, he's been more efficient on the offensive end, the 3-point shot is starting to come around a bit. So even though we're not seeing this huge sophomore jump where we just see Scoot's stats skyrocket, if you watch him play you can see that he's maturing as a player, and he's having more of an impact on the game, and he's still so young, there's still so much more room for him to grow. But the fact that he's adopted this team-first mentality, he doesn't mind coming off the bench if that's what Chauncey Billups asks him to, that's a really good sign, and it should make you excited about his development as a player. Another second-year player that's been very impressive has been Toumani Camara. I was listening to the Locked On Blazers podcast, and in the podcast it was brought up that Toumani Camara started his college career as a 6'6" small forward. And then when he transferred to Dayton, they asked him to play center. Then if you look at his time with the Blazers, they've asked him to be that point of attack defender. And I think if you look at that history, it just kind of highlights the fact that Toumani Camara can really do anything the team asks him to. He's a guy who will take charges, he'll defend on the perimeter, he'll protect the rim, he'll pick up full court. And then offensively, even if he's not having a good shooting night, he's going to attack the glass and create second chance opportunities for his team. So to me, he's really set the tone for this team, and he's the biggest reason why Portland has been playing so well on defense as of late. Deni has also been playing very well lately. Like Toumani, he's a very versatile defender. And then offensively, he's just such a physical force. He's able to grab rebounds or force turnovers and then just push the ball. And he just barrels into guys. He just forces his way to the bucket and really gets there at will, whether he's, pushing in transition, Or even in the half court, sometimes the Blazers will just send him the ball on the wing, and he's able to just force his way to the bucket, which just creates advantages either for himself, where he gets a layup or draws a foul, or if he attacks and he draws another defender, he's smart enough to make the pass to the open man for them to get a bucket. Overall, this team's just been able to achieve a nice balanced scoring attack. Some nights Denny is the leading scorer, some nights Anthony Simons could go off for 30 points. DeAndre Ayton could have a big scoring night. Shaedon Sharpe could have a big scoring night off the bench. And I think that's really good to see because for a young team, if you don't have that franchise player like I was talking about, you just want to see these young players play the best they possibly can in their role. And if that means Shaedon Sharpe is a really good scorer off the bench as a sixth man right now, if that's the best role for him at this current moment, then that's awesome to see him thriving in that role right now. Kind of the same thing with Scoot Henderson. Even if he's not starting, he's been consistent with his energy and effort on defense. He's running the offense effectively. He's been more efficient as a scorer himself. You can never say that a young player is definitely going to develop into a star. And sometimes if you try to force them into that role, it can actually have an adverse effect on them. I think a good example is Aaron Gordon with the Magic. They drafted him with a very early pick. They tried to make him the #1 option on that team and build around him, but he just wasn't meant for that role. Then he gets traded for Denver. He can play more of a Swiss Army knife type of role, and he helps lead them to a championship. And then you compare that to Kawhi Leonard's development with the Spurs, and he was brought along a lot more slowly. Albeit the Spurs did have a much deeper team, but the point is San Antonio had the mentality of bringing Kawhi along slowly and finding out what he could and couldn't do. And even if Kawhi weren't able to develop into an offensive superstar, San Antonio at the very least identified, again, what he was and wasn't good at, and they could have had a role for him regardless. We can't say for sure that Scoot Henderson or Shaedon Sharpe or any of these young players on the team are going to develop into stars, but what we are seeing is that they can play a role and contribute to winning basketball. The Blazers do have a fairly tough remaining schedule, and if they're able to keep winning, that could actually be a good thing. Even though they wouldn't get a great pick, they'd at least be able to say that our young players are able to come together and win against good competition. It's not like they're just beating up on bad teams. They've been beating good teams during this stretch, and if they keep doing so, they can hold their hat on that and build on that momentum into next season. On the other hand, if they start losing more games, that wouldn't be so bad either. It would give them a good chance at a top pick, and then you could at least look back on the season and say, you know what, we had this stretch of basketball where we were playing really well. We saw these guys just really buy into what we were trying to do, and we were winning games. Guys were playing their role really well, and we saw our young guys take a step in their development. Even if it wasn't massive, we saw them take a step forward, and that's really good for a rebuilding team. So I just wanted to shout out the Blazers because I feel like this stretch of play has really just been glossed over. Obviously, the trade deadline was capturing everybody's attention, but Portland has gone from a team who started off the year really shaky, as I touched on, and they've started to rewrite the narrative on their season. Even if they don't end up making the play-in or playoffs, you can at least say that they showed positive signs, and that's worth mentioning and bringing attention to because they've gone from a team that I didn't really have too high hopes for coming into the season to a team that's appearing to take positive steps in the right direction in their rebuild. Anyways, that's going to be all for today's video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. With all of that being said, I'm out, and I'll see you in the next video.